Hello and a warm welcome to New Money. I'm Bryan, and this evening we are focusing on the healthcare industry. Tonight's special program will focus mainly on one of the most significant developments in South Africa's healthcare landscape, the President's long-awaited signing of the National Health Insurance. This landmark legislation promises to revolutionise healthcare delivery in our nation, ensuring that quality healthcare becomes accessible to all citizens regardless of their socio-economic status. However, as with any substantial reform, the NHI bill has sparked intense debate and scrutiny. Questions regarding its constitutionality have emerged, triggering legal challenges from various sectors. Helping to make sense of this and the impact this has on South African citizens is Khulekani Mathe, CEO designate of BUSA, the business unit of South Africa. Khulekani, thank you very much for joining me this evening.
Good evening, Bryan, and thank you for the opportunity.
Let me share with you two stories that have happened to me today. The first is I got a phone call from someone 2 hours from Pretoria who said he's absolutely thrilled that NHI has now come in, and he has to come to Pretoria every 3 months for x-rays, and he's now hoping that they're going to bring all the x-ray machines to this particular rural area and he won't have to travel. The second caller I got this morning was someone who said, can they go to any private hospital even though they don't have a medical aid to get treatment? So those are just two of the questions I got this morning. But what is your reaction to the signing of the NH bill into law?
Well, our reaction is simply one that says that, firstly, we fully support the objective of the bill, which is universal health coverage. We believe that every South African should have access to good quality health care without having to pay lots of money that puts them out of pocket. What we have said since before the signing of the bill and after was that the bill that the President signed into law was not taking us in the direction of achieving the goal of universal health care. And we have been agitating for the bill to really be sent back to Parliament for reconsideration so that we can get a bill in place that really take us towards that goal. And so that remains our view. It is now law, but of course, laws can be amended. We think that a lot would be achieved if we amended some parts of the law so that we have a law that can help us achieve the goal of universal care.
Khulekani, what happened on the weekend was that Cyril Ramaphosa made a comment that he's quite open to receiving comments and discussing the concerns of so many parties. Does that mean that even though NHI is now in a bill form, there will be discussions? Because NHI was received with mixed reactions, with politicians and unions welcoming the bill, while stakeholders in the private healthcare sector appear to oppose the bill, including opposition political parties, clearly stating they will commence legal action when the bill is signed. The big question, is NH in its current form constitutional? And with what Cyril Ramaphosa announced on the weekend, will that maybe avoid all the legal problems that may now go ahead?
So as you know, various other organizations, including political parties, have indicated their intention to challenge the bill. So I cannot speak for them in terms of whether the views expressed over the weekend will persuade them differently. But we have always said as business that our first preference was to sit around the table and fix things so that we have a bill that works. So if the President is open to engaging with us and hearing our views and really taking our views into account, that is something we would welcome. As to the constitutionality, I mean, we've raised the point as well about the constitutionality of the bill. I am not a constitutional lawyer. Obviously, that would have to be tested by the competent authorities, but we have raised that as a potential issue that a whole lot of very constructive comments were made, certainly by business, submitted to Parliament, various stages of the bill, but that those were not really considered at all. They were completely disregarded. And the point we were making was that, of course, it was never the intention in the Constitution for consultation to simply become a tick box exercise. Our contention is that the intention was for those making the laws to actually hear the different stakeholders, consider their views thoroughly before proceeding. And we're arguing that we don't think that has happened.
Kulakani, how will the national health insurance be funded and by whom? Are there any innovative financing strategies proposed in the bill to ensure sustainability and equity in healthcare provisions? Is this the death knell? Is this the end of tax credits for so many people, particularly pensioners, who certainly pay a lot more than what is paid for by the medical aids, where they get a tax deduction? I remember Dr. Crisp saying some time ago that there's an amount of money already set aside that's budgeted for healthcare. This budget will be used, and everyone's concern about how it's going to be funded really is unreasonable.
So the question of the funding of the NHI is one of the criticisms that we've leveled, but there isn't a detailed plan of how funding will be mobilized to implement this policy. And of course, everything you've said about potentially ending the tax credit, et cetera, have been thrown out there, but we don't as yet have a blueprint that says this is how the bill will be funded, so that everybody can engage with that, and so that the rest of the public can say, we're happy to buy into this in its totality, in terms of the objectives on the healthcare front, what it wants to achieve, as well as how it's going to be funded. So that is one of the criticisms, and this is something we would hope does get threshed out in the engagements that the president seems willing to now embark on.
We'll probably hear more about that in the midterm budget in October, particularly the tax credits, because if you think about it, there's not that many. If you take the country as a whole and you take those in retirement and you take those who aren't well and are paying that much more, although everyone gets a tax credit, husband, wife, children, it'll be like an additional taxation. But what are the key provisions of the bill, considering that one of the goals of the National Health Insurance is to improve equity and access to healthcare? Does achieve these objectives, particularly for marginalized and underserved communities?
So firstly, we as a country and as an economy are really in a very difficult position, very poor position or weak position, I should say. And so you will be aware, I'm pretty sure, Bryan, that in other areas, we really have a wonderful partnership with government, which partnership recognizes that if we go it alone, we do not achieve very much. But if we work together, both private and public, we achieve a lot more. And so we've seen some partnership and improvements in energy, transport and logistics, etc., which is something we as business have welcomed. And what we're really saying is that we have a goal such as universal health coverage. It would take us that much longer to achieve if government simply went ahead on its own. But you already have a fairly well-established private health system, both on the provision side as well as on the funding side. We should really be looking at mechanisms of tapping into the resources and collective resources and collective strength, collective energy, collective know-how to try and pull together to deliver the NHI. As things stand, you kind of seeing an environment in which we're sort of moving away from that principle, as it were.
Um, Kani, what does the future look like for medical schemes and private healthcare practitioners? And are there any specific measures outlined in the bill to address their role in the new healthcare landscape? And let me just add to that, there are many countries in the world who have an NHI system, but that does not preclude private healthcare. And it looks like this bill intends to exclude anything that NHI provides to now be dealt with in the private healthcare system. Your views?
So would agree with you that to the extent that there is a exclusion of the private healthcare, that clearly would be a concern. But let me just say that, I mean, I'm not a healthcare expert, but I've had comment from experts, including doctors, raising concerns. And I would just really call for those concerns to be taken seriously. We do not want to weaken our healthcare system any more than it is already. And so we would need to take those concerns to heart. Now, as to the future of medical schemes, from what we can read in Section 33 that limits medical schemes, well, when the NHI is fully implemented, would limit the medical schemes, in a sense, to cover those aspects and services not covered by the NHI. We don't know how big or small that portion would be, whether it would render medical schemes unviable. It may very well do. So we do have those concerns just about how that particular clause seems to really limit medical schemes in an environment where we should be, again, drawing on the strengths of both. As in many other countries, you have the private and the public coexisting, even where there is a national health service or insurance of sorts.
We'll be back with more right here on You and Your Money after the break.